nett Jabetsky, Bodat Comrade.
Oh, Stuhl. Stuhl.
Oh my god! They killed Kenny! You bastards! What the hell is that thing?
Among the myriad of genres that have evolved throughout the history of storytelling, there's been one which has consistently pushed the barriers of imagination and creativity simultaneously, driving the innovation of science and technology through the blockade of what we previously believed possible. That genre is science fiction. However, in our modern shit show, we've arrived at the age where we can begin to call it science reality. Many of the films which used to captivate the minds of audiences have simply become the norm. We have become so desensitized to our current level of advancement that we pay no mind to the fact that there's a football field-sized science lab orbiting above our heads at all times. But have we ever considered how important that facility would be if nuclear war were to break out?
Just out of curiosity, we could use the cards to buy gum, then immediately quit the army, right?
Correct. There's no obligation. Unless, of course, war were declared.
That is exactly what the film ISS attempts to explore. But how good of a job does it do? Let's take a look. After a brief explanation of the history of the International Space Station and its importance to peace between Russia and the United States, a lesson that's likely not in the history books in Portland as to them the Soviet Union was the good guys, we're introduced to Christian, an astronaut returning to the station, and Kira, a new addition to the team. Upon docking, Kira becomes acquainted with Gordon, the remaining American member, and the 3 Russian cosmonauts also stationed aboard, Nika, Nikolai, and Alexei. Following the acclimation process, she is shown the general procedures and functions of the station, including the life support system, where she is told that as long as you can hear the hum, everyone on board will stay alive. That was highly specific. I wonder if that's some kind of foreshadowing. Each person on the station has a specific job, and Kira's is apparently to torture mice in zero gravity. Do biological experiments alongside Alexei, who is working on a cure for radiation sickness. That was also highly specific. I wonder if that's some kind of foreshadowing as well. As a ritual for when the team is shifted, the Astro and cosmonauts have dinner where they drink and discuss their plans for the future, as well as exchange gifts brought back from Earth. Seeing as how Christian didn't know what to get for Kira, he gives her a mini replica rocket lanyard, which is made with the exact same material as the tethers they use on the station. That too was insanely specific. Did anyone tell them that not every single thing they show on screen needs to be set up for something? Seriously, we're only 15 minutes into the fucking movie here, guys. In addition to the fun, they go over the ground rules, the most important of which is leaving Earth's problems behind, explaining that things such as the politics of the world are beneath them and that they represent something more. All of this camaraderie is short-lived though, as not long after, a nuclear war breaks out down on Earth between, you guessed it, the United States and Russia.
What's that?
War were declared.
Setting the stage for one of the most unlikely battles you'd ever expect for World War III, as the ISS becomes a priority 1 foothold, and both crews are ordered to take it by any means necessary. At this point, the story takes a hard turn into the realm of science reality, as the crews begin to distrust one another, leading to increasing paranoia and sabotage, all while the systems slowly fail around them. The obvious themes of isolation, paranoia, and uncertainty are front and center throughout the narrative. There are clear moments of characters unsure of who they should trust regardless of which nation they come from. The movie uses this as a backdrop to explore even more complex versions of loyalty to friends and even lovers in the face of duty and country. It broaches the subject of human nature on the most basic levels, survival and the ugly side of it. Unfortunately, it often falls short of exploring these themes to their fullest, as it doesn't really commit to any one of them enough. Starting with some great ideas but leaving the audience marooned soon after, which gives the entire movie a general feeling of getting close but not quite crossing the finish line.
If you ain't first, you're last. You know what I'm talking about? That phrase is trademark, not to use the tradition of Ricky Bobby.
When your film relies on a small but intimate cast to carry the load, you better hit it out of the park with each role. Sadly, what they ended up with is a mixed bag that seems to be disproportionately talented in regard to importance. To start, we have Kira, played by Ariana DeBose, an actress whose resume, though spread out over film, television, and theater, boasts a decent enough amount of experience that you'd think she'd be able to run with the ball as a lead. However, she feels entirely out of her element here, as she feels like less of a character and more of an audience surrogate. I know that she's most well known for musical theater and its adaptations, but you'd think at least some of that presence would translate. But here she's just a charisma vacuum that if the narrative didn't constantly remind me I should be caring about, I'd have likely forgotten. I can only hope that in the time since this was released at the Tribeca Film Festival, she's improved her range a little bit, as she's involved in quite a few projects in the upcoming year. On the other side of the coin, we have John Gallagher Jr. playing Christian, a former Air Force pilot turned scientist. Of all the actors in the movie, I would say he has by far the best showing as he slowly turns from confident and cocky to completely paranoid and unreasonable in a very believable way. It's a shame that through large chunks of the film, he has very little role to play, as I personally would have liked to see more of this guy. Rounding out the American side of things is Chris Messina as Gordon, the most senior member of the crew and de facto leader. He's also the cast member with by far the most experience, and it shows as he's able to convincingly portray a commander grappling with the tough decisions while being unsure of who to trust. As for the Russian side of things, despite one of the actors being Danish, but it's all Greek to me, we have Kosta Ronin, Pilo Aspak, and Masha Mashkova, who if a potato manufacturer doesn't hit up for a spokesperson deal, I will personally consider one of the biggest missed opportunities of all time.
Well, you're sitting on a gold mine, Trebek.
Of the three of them, the one who could most accurately be called the main Russian is Kosta for his portrayal of Nikolai, an actor who was clearly asked to test the limitations of the suspension of disbelief spectrum, as this guy goes from reserved man of science to over-the-top comic book villain in record time.
I'm telling you, please move! This is our big problem in the Russian space station!
Strangely enough, after over a year of complaining about films being too long and dragging for runtime, lately I've been encountering several with the exact opposite problem. Due to the amount of themes being juggled, the 95-minute runtime just isn't enough to allow for them to fully develop, which means this movie never really makes it out of second gear. Essentially, we have 20 minutes of setup, 10 minutes of payoff, and an hour of filler. Personally, it felt like I was perpetually on the cusp of being taken for a ride only for it to stall out. Because of this, the moments of tension never feel tense enough, and when your entire premise is paranoia and claustrophobia, the overall product suffers immensely. Hold on, that actually reminds me, I have to make a call. Yes, hi, it's me. Remember how we discussed that whole, moving out of this extremely small office into, a bigger studio? I was just wondering if anything came of that. No? Okay. I just feel like someone's watching me. With a budget of $20 million, one positive thing I will say is that they definitely used it well. The film looks really good, and with a mix of practical effects and CGI where it's needed, you really do feel like these people are truly on the ISS. The tightness of the set, the props utilized, and the effects used to give the appearance of the lack of gravity all add to the authenticity. This is another example in the ever-growing list of productions that show that the current Hollywood model of just throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at a film is not the answer to effects quality, and you can't outsource passion when it comes to set design. That said, like most smaller budget projects, there are times where it's pretty obvious, but this is easily ignorable under the circumstances. In some spots, it gets a bit too artsy for its own good and veers into pretentious camera work, which adds little to the scenes, mostly acting as pointless window dressing, and even becoming a bit of a distraction at times. There are also people on the staff who clearly just graduated from film school because the reliance on symbolism in this one is off the charts. You get a real sense of the crew's indie film tendencies poking through, as they evidently really like the smell of their own farts. The biggest issue with the film in terms of not maximizing what it could have been might be the director, Gabriella Capperthwaite, or as you might know her as, the woman who nearly single-handedly took down SeaWorld. Seriously, go look it up. This chick cut her teeth with documentaries, and with such limited experience in the feature film realm, it's easy to see why certain aspects of the film's narrative feel incomplete. Also, what is it with these documentarians all transitioning into space movies? She isn't super heavy-handed with her personal messaging here, as I'm fairly certain it's a near-universal feeling that complete and total nuclear holocaust is just a little bit less than ideal. But there's seriously a problem with foreshadowing here, as literally the entire opening 15 minutes or so is packed with so much of it that it really becomes obvious and obnoxious. In the end, ISS sits in a very weird place. Is it a bad film? No, but with all the issues of underexplored themes, artsiness for the hell of it, and a clear miscast in the main role, it's not a must-see. It's visually beautiful and had a ton of potential, but falls short in its quest to seemingly be a modern 2001: A Space Odyssey, and ends up being a glorified episode of Black Mirror instead. Every poignant moment is offset by these supposed highly intelligent people doing utterly stupid things, like devolving into one of the most hilarious fistfights you'll ever see on screen. Add a dash of your standard shoehorned modern identity politics at certain points which serve no purpose to the narrative except to have them check some boxes, and you have a greatest hits of big budget films played out on the indie scene. When you account for the overpacked narrative that somehow still wastes all the promise of its themes, just to bombard its audience with symbolism, you're left with a film that somehow feels both convoluted and incomplete at the same time. And if that's not enough to convince you that you can just wait until this artsy-fartsy missed opportunity inevitably hits Netflix, I'm not sure anything I could possibly say would do the trick.